Hakari Kinji versus Ryu Ishigori, the fever versus the hunger, is one of the most exciting hypothetical matchups in JJK, as both characters have this JoJo-esque flair to them whenever they're on screen. Now, even though this is an interesting matchup, it's not really close, so let's go ahead and dive into both characters. And for disclaimer, I'm only using manga canon feats as it's more in line with the original intent of the author, and only one of the characters has a full anime adaptation of all their noteworthy feats. The thing Ryu Ishigori is mostly known for is having the highest output of all the Killing Game players. Considering this statement was made after both Yuta and Hakari were already players, we can assume this would apply to both of them. His incredible output translates into his immense punching power and durability, which is still something that stood out to Sukuna amongst all the people he had faced, and Yuta mentions without guarding properly, he would have taken damage from Ryu. Ryu's output especially shines with his cursed technique, Granite Blast, a concentrated beam of cursed energy capable of leveling buildings and damaging Yuta's reinforced hand. Speed-wise, he's also pretty much relative to Yuta, as he's able to keep up in all their encounters. Ryu especially takes damage from a fully manifested Rika punching him, showing that his durability isn't exactly infallible, but his resilience as well. Ryu isn't a confirmed user of RCT, as he doesn't heal from any of the damage he sustains during the fight, which would have been advantageous at certain points. And we never get any visual hints like the RCT glow or steam. Ryu is a confirmed domain expansion user, but it's overall featless, but we can assume it's probably an extension of his technique. In terms of battle IQ, Ryu was roughly average with nothing too impressive. Now onto Hakari Kinji, the suspended third year. He is one of the heavy hitters of the next generation of sorcerers, praised by Gojo for his strength and potential. Hakari has two forms of fighting, base and jackpot. Base Hakari is bare minimum equivalent to post Shibuya Yuji, but I prefer the interpretation of Hakari being stronger as it lines up with him being in the same tier as Yuta and also being Yuji's upperclassman. Hakari shows fairly impressive damage on Yuji in their encounter that neither one of them was really taking seriously, as Yuji stopped fighting halfway through and Hakari's allowing Yuji to get up instead of completely wailing on him. And I think it's fair to assume Hakari wasn't punching Yuji at full strength, as he didn't have the intention of actually killing him. Base Hakari shows the ability to still outspeed Charles when he chooses to, even with Charles being able to see a few seconds into the future. And any situations in their fight where Charles manages to land a strike on Hakari, it's because Hakari allowed it to happen. Hakari often toys with his opponents who either aren't an immediate threat or haven't shown anything for him to get serious. When fighting Arame, we don't get to see their battle while Hakari is in base inside the domain, but we can see he didn't take any damage from Arame, leading me to believe that base Hakari should be faster than anything Arame can do in close quarters combat. Hakari also has a cursed energy trait of being rough or having an edge in some translations that deal extra pain from his attacks. Once Hakari opens his domain and begins rolling, he can get something called a jackpot, which is his second form. In this state, Hakari has unlimited cursed energy for 4 minutes and 11 seconds, the length of the theme song for his ability. With this unlimited CE comes immense physical boost on top of already impressive base stats, and fully automatic RC, making him effectively immortal unless you can completely obliterate his head. This pseudo immortality gives him the best survivability in the series, probably only behind Maharaga. Hakari has various statements of being as strong or stronger than Yuta, and I think this is mostly relevant when talking about him in physicals, as Hakari naturally has a stronger foundation than Yuta and has probably similar reinforcement and output. Speed-wise, Hakari is fairly impressive, blitzing Charles even after Charles gets the conditions of his precognition. And in his Kashimo fight, he can punch Kashimo, hit an emote, and then rush over to continue his combo on Kashimo midair. In the Arame fight, the attack she lands later on was partially due to Hakari's strategy of just tanking everything in jackpot so he can continue his momentum, due to the fact she landed no confirmed hits on base Hakari. In terms of punching power, Hakari shows fairly good feats compared to the punching power of his peers and relative to his power level, as he can bruise and make Kashimo bleed, someone he's relative to and physically superior to in jackpot. He's also able to knock out Charles with one kick. Considering Charles is a weaker sorcerer, he could probably do this to most grade 1s and below, and being able to brutalize Yuji's face with just regular casual punches. Lastly, Hakari's shown very impressive battle IQ and just regular IQ feats with his fight with Kashimo, making last second plans and strategies that led him to win the fight. Now, this matchup comes down to if Ryu can overcome Hakari's immortality, or if he can catch him in base, try to put him down then. And for Hakari, it's if he can overcome Ryu's durability and wear him down to the point where he can eventually knock him out. I lean more towards Hakari in this matchup, as he has the better overall advantages, and it's fairly similar to his fight with Kashimo, with the problem being that Ryu can do more damage to Hakari, but he doesn't have the stamina reserves or the ability to heal the damage. While Hakari can't do as much damage as Ryu, but he will be able to last longer in the fight, and he will heal all the damage that Ryu could do on him. So considering how similar this is to Kashimo, and how, in my opinion, I don't think this is as much of a challenge as Kashimo was, I think this will be an easier fight for Hakari to handle. And due to the fact that base Hakari can survive both Kashimo and Arame, I don't think Ryu is going to be that big of a challenge for base Hakari to get into jackpot, especially since Yuta is able to both block and react to Granite Blast, which is something that isn't really possible with Kashimo's Lightning Bolt. You could potentially react to it in a certain way, but you're definitely not blocking it, as it will probably just tear through anybody. So I think Granite Blast, to regular Granite Blast, will be average light work for Hakari to handle, or he can just heal through it if it does do more damage. So not really going to be a big deal. And the only way for his Granite Blast to matter is if he lands a headshot on Hakari, which is going to be significantly difficult considering Hakari's speed and relative statements to Yuta, who is able to outspeed Granite Blast. In a close quarters fight, I do think Hakari would do better than Yuta did, for example, considering the fact that Hakari has statements of being stronger than Yuta, and just simply put, Hakari has a better base body for physicals compared to Yuta, who has to do a lot of reinforcing to get his body to that kind of level. And Hakari would have no reason to hold back or conserve energy, so he could go all out on Ryu from the start of their fight, basically jumpstarting the accumulation of damage that would be happening during the course of the fight. Ryu's best case of winning is using his domain, but that comes with a huge risk, as if he opens his domain while Hakari's in base, Hakari can clash and they'll be forced to both fist fight, as Ryu's technique would be being used by the domain, so he wouldn't be able to use it. And if Hakari gets a jackpot, Ryu would have already burned through a lot of curse energy just maintaining his domain, while Hakari would be back at full stamina, and it would go back down to a fist fight with Hakari having to deal with Ryu's sure hit as well. And considering what we do see from Ryu's Granite Blast and how that would most likely be incorporated into his sure hit, I don't think it's shown anything potent enough to be able to completely obliterate Hakari. So I think in a situation where it's both of them fighting inside the domain, Hakari's in jackpot, I do think Hakari would just dominate Ryu physically to the point where the domain would collapse, or Ryu would have to make a strategic decision to close the domain, in which he would then be dealing with burnout and all the expended energy and stamina that he would have had to do opening his domain. And he'd be having to fight a basically fully fresh Hakari all the time. And we see Ryu especially taking damage post his opening domain when he's fighting Rika, so I think Hakari at this point would be able to do similar levels of damage considering the two statements Hakari has on his output in jackpot. So with this fight, I think it really just comes down to Ryu doesn't have the attack potency. To really deal heavy damage to Hakari to the point where he would die in jackpot especially. And when Hakari's in base, he is crafty enough to not get hit by any Ryu's most lethal attacks that could potentially put him down in base. And so overall, that's my thoughts on this battle. I do think it's a heavy battle leaning more towards Hakari. I think even just narratively wise, I don't think any of the reincarnated sorcerers are really put in a position to where they're supposed to be significantly ahead of any of the, sole exception of Yuji and Maki prior to Holy Awakening. I don't think any of the reincarnated sorcerers are supposed to be in a position where they're at a point where they're significantly stronger than the next generation of stronger sorcerers, if that makes sense. But so let me know what you guys think down below, subscribe and all that.